What's up, everybody? Oh, I really said that wrong. What's up, everybody?
You're recording?
I'm recording.
Why don't you click that part?
Should I clip that? Okay. What's up, everybody? I am here with Amy on a Monday night. It's just us two tonight. But we thought, why not still have our conversation? This is the last Monday of the infamous 2020, which is sure to be a year in the history books. And I just wanted to allow it to be an occasion where we could reflect on our sense of 2020 and look forward. And I wanted to sort of let us have this time. So if you're watching, maybe you could do this with us. But where we, I guess, I noticed that in the scriptures, God's very careful about trying to help his people think about time in a certain way, right? Where they remember the past, not just in terms of things that happened, but they try to have a reflective understanding of the past in terms of noticing how God has been present to them and with them in the past. And so I thought if we could end the year on that note, as well as looking forward to 2021, 2021 New Year, you oftentimes have like New Year's resolutions or hopes or desires that you express, and part of that is also trying to ask God to shape our dreams and our hopes, right? So that our desires for the coming year is his desires for us. I was gonna see first what memories or what kinds of events 2020 triggers for us. Triggers is probably the right word, but when we think about 2020, maybe on the big picture level, as well as in our own lives, what we think of. So how would you start that?
2020.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing that affected everybody's life is this coronavirus. But I guess, I don't know, number 2020.
Yeah, 2020. 2020 vision. In the beginning of the year, that's what we were thinking about, right?
Yeah. I guess just now I was thinking about 2020. Like, I don't know if anyone remembers 1999 to 2000, but that was a big deal because it's like, oh, it's a new millennium. But 2020, that means we're 1/5 of the way into the century.
Wow, yeah.
So, those YouTube videos about what would I tell my past self about the coronavirus starting from January. Everybody was talking about the wildfires in Australia, watching these videos of koalas trying to escape these burning forests.
That was before coronavirus?
Yeah, that was like January 2020.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But East Asian friends, and especially, like first generation or 1.5 generation East Asian friends were really paying attention to the news in East Asia starting January or really December about this coronavirus. So I do remember there being a lot of stir and fear even through January and February. And then in the US, the lockdown didn't happen shutdown, quarantine didn't happen until March.
Right. So we were paying attention to it early in February, or like mid-February?
It was popping up on the news in January and February, but mostly
in the US,
like East Asian news sources.
Right.
And then because the wave didn't hit completely in Europe until late February, early March, then the U.S. started paying more attention, and then I think it was March 16th that,
Right.
Especially on the East Coast, that's when things started to close.
Yeah, I remember because I was invited to share at that one church, and I was not sure whether to go, and that was like the borderline week. Because after that, everybody's like, "Don't do it, don't meet." But like that one Sunday, I think I had. Did I wear a mask or what?
We don't wear masks yet.
We didn't wear masks then.
But we were trying to not shake hands, and then stay 6 feet apart.
We did the elbow thing, right?
Yeah.
We did the elbow thing at that point. I think already then people were saying elbows. Yeah. But then before that, I remember for the leadership program that I was in.
That was the last weekend.
That was the last week, and that was like, what was it? First week of March, second week of March.
Or maybe second weekend.
And they had us go to the beach, is where they had held it, and so it was like kind of isolated, anyways. There was nobody there at that time of year. It was still kind of cold.
But remember, you got sick in February. I'm just kidding. I got sick too. But
yeah, maybe we had COVID then.
I thought that, well, a lot of people were getting sick in January with colds and flus. I remember going to church, and then some people were saying, "Oh, all of HPCA was taking turns getting sick," and then you got really sick.
Yeah.
And I remember it took you
not the most sick I've ever been in terms of like feeling, but it was the most sick I've ever been.
You were pretty sick.
Yeah, well, it's pretty bad. It's probably one of the worst I've been, but
and then
it's the longest I've been. I just wouldn't get better. It wouldn't get better.
I thought it was because you didn't get the flu shot, and I got my flu shot.
And then I got you sick.
I was like, that's what you get for not getting the flu shot. And then on day 3, I got really sick. But I recovered. Fully recovered probably around the same time, but I did go back. I forced myself to go back to work after 2 days.
And probably spread coronavirus to everybody.
No, I wear masks all the time. Wash my hands 100 times a day.
Yeah, that's funny.
But yeah, if it wasn't the SARS-CoV-2, it might have been another coronavirus that might have given us some immunity, something.
Right, or just a bad flu that we might have spread too. So that was like January through March. I mean, I remember
was after going to that a cappella concert, 2,000 people in a room, and then right after that we went to a dance club. Like 300 people crammed.
Yeah, it was just a crammed in space, and then right after that we got sick. Yeah, that's right.
A week after.
So that's January to March, and then I remember March into April. It was just like the world felt like it was like, what is this thing? And everybody's, at least for me, everybody's researching this virus, and you're on it the whole time. You're looking at it the whole time. I remember that. That was a huge. And then George Floyd happened. When was that?
At the end of March, end of May.
April. So March, April. June. So May, June. And then everybody's like, yeah, and everybody's frustrated during this coronavirus. So this is like becoming a uprising. Obviously, the police brutality stuff and the race stuff has been accelerating in the last, ever since.
Well, Ahmaud Arbery was like May.
Ahmaud Arbery was in.
Breonna Taylor was actually earlier, but it didn't surface.
It didn't surface
until later.
Breonna Taylor, and then Ahmaud Arbery is when Breonna Taylor kind of surfaced.
Right.
And then after that, it was
George Floyd.
George Floyd was like a couple weeks or a month later.
Well, a couple of days before George Floyd was the bird-watching guy.
Yeah, the bird-watching woman.
The woman, no, the man was bird-watching, and then the woman was walking her dog off leash.
The white woman, yeah.
And they had the same last name, and I can't remember the last name.
So obviously the whole thing about everybody being at home and then watching the news and constantly, that was seen as a factor to like how everybody's fixated on the same news things. And then anyways, I remember the conversations in the aftermath of that. And I was really encouraged at just kind of the momentum in terms of, I always feel a strong sense of wanting to talk about race as Asian American, and trying to engage, especially white and Black people together, but also really just in general, getting us to connect together and talk about these things, and not just race, but how our racial experiences in a racialized world, how that shapes how we connect to each other and injustice and things like that. And so I remember some conversations and some of these bigger efforts. We had that prayer thing down at the art museum that was like hundreds of people that showed up down there. And I remember worried because we're like, should we do that during coronavirus? But everybody wore masks and they were 6 feet apart.
Depending on which protest you went to.
Yeah, at least at that one, it was kind of a peaceful prayer protest kind of thing. And I was encouraged because of the number of different kinds of people that showed up. A lot of church leaders, and getting to help Dr. Sherry Jones organize that was really a blessing. But yeah, besides, after that, that really, the protests and all that, you had the looting then that happened right after that, right? And then the whole national conversation surrounding policing and all that, that was probably a good 6 weeks to 2 months, right? Where that was dominated everything, right? That would be March, June, July.
Right? Isn't it still going on in Portland?
Yeah, at least it's still going on nationally, but yeah.
Especially with the, I think this presidential term, protests were just common.
Right. Well, and that sort of, I guess, bled into the presidential, because the election cycle really July, August, September at that point, especially August, right? September, October, 2 months out is when it got heated, right?
I can't remember when the candidate was chosen for the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
People were still campaigning through like May or June, probably.
Oh man, I don't even remember.
All those Democratic candidates.
This is gonna make me go back and
read your diary.
Yeah, read the diary that I only wrote a couple entries in. But yeah, look through. Man, yeah. Man, I'm kicking myself that I didn't write a diary this whole year, right? If you were to write a diary, it would be the year 2020. But yes, the next, I guess when I think of the flare-ups this year, the big things in the virus, George Floyd, the racial injustice uprising, all that stuff. The election, that's another big one, right? And all of the sort of conversations, punditry, and protests and everything surrounding that. And then even the drama afterwards, right? Because I guess we're now in the phase where it's post-election, because I remember even leading up to the election, I remember a lot of us were predicting it's going to be a chaos in the US afterwards anyways, because we figured
no matter who
won, you'd have disagreement, and then you'd have militias and stuff like that, and or protests and so I guess with Joe Biden gaining the vote, you have there still is that process of people protesting and not considering it legitimate and all these things, and so that's now a whole saga, right? And it's not done yet because we wait 2021 for the Electoral College to make it official.
No,
right?
They already made their vote.
They made their
early
vote.
December, but
so it'd be January. The inauguration, right, is when he would actually become president, right? Joe Biden. And then on top of that, I guess just.
That's just American news, like so many.
Right. Lebanon, wasn't it Lebanon?
That explosion. I think it was like September or something.
Those are the kind of the hot spots of big news items that I think really shaped a lot of people's perspectives.
In this country.
And this country, I remember near the end of this year too, the bigger.
This country is not the whole world.
This reemerging of the COVID again, it's weird that you have these big phases and stuff. Another drama thing is just how the faith community has thought about COVID, in terms of should our churches meet in person? Are we getting persecuted? I know that was one big, there's just been so many conversations that have been debates really, right, this year.
I mean, churches, schools,
Right.
every industry.
Right. I guess I pay attention more to the church ones, because I guess that's
your world.
That's the world I think about. I mean, personally, I think about, I definitely think about the George Floyd stuff. I think about, the stuff we've been doing in our neighborhood with the trash cleanup and the engaging neighbors and trying to, in a small way, be salt and light with masks on in our neighborhood. I think has been one bright spot for me when I think about 2020. And continuing to connect with certain people, and different small groups of people I'm still connected to. I think about a couple of people who passed away this year too. My friend Kyle. What do you think about personally, besides those big events?
I became an auntie.
Yeah, that's right. And we visited him twice.
Yeah.
In Michigan during the pandemic.
We went to a couple virtual weddings and then a couple small outdoor weddings. A lot of people passed away.
That's right. We went to an in-person wedding. Moses married Liz. That was the first one. And then the other one.
It was pretty early in the pandemic, yeah.
Yeah, 2 other outdoor ones. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, 2020 has shifted my priorities a little bit. I mean, I think I've definitely seen myself connected to other people that I wouldn't have otherwise connected to, through Zoom and through calls and stuff like that.
I mean, I know a lot of people did check-in calls with people. So my high school friends, we did a check-in call once a week, probably from April through June or July. And then, honestly, for me, career-wise, it was a good break because I felt like things were going to collapse at work. We just made it just like pressure cooker. One staff was really burnt out, ready to quit. I was feeling really burnt out. Just the pace that we were working did not seem very thought through. It was kind of like hamster wheel. And so as a way to release the pressure valve, take a little break, there was some intense like inter-team, some conflict as well, and I think it helped space things out, air things out, give people breaks from one another and from the nature of the job. As even reflecting on things, just allowing us to think about why we're doing what we're doing. I think a lot of people did some big moves this year, like housing or career or I mean, divorce rate is up, right? Or just
I've heard. I mean, I guess I've heard a lot of people
I don't know about in this country, but
have done a lot of fighting at home. Thankfully, God didn't have us. God protected us mostly, right? I don't remember really fighting a lot during this year.
No, it was like I was really annoyed at you, like week 11 and then week 22, and then you got a new hobby, and I was like, oh, that's fine.
Yeah, I guess I don't. I guess thankfully I feel protected from the in-house dynamics that I think a lot of people felt. I mean, Can I share? I mean, we can keep affecting some of this. I want to share about some of the things that for Monday nights we also looked at this year. I mean, in the beginning of the year, this is when we were still in person, and we actually had a pretty good group of people connecting up on Monday nights.
So long ago.
Yeah, we were talking about mental health. I remember we had like, Lizzie shared about addiction, and Christy shared about like physical health and mental health, and how it's all connected together. We had some counselors come in, Sue and David Medina. Yeah, I thought that was a really good conversation. Pastor Virgie, yeah. I really enjoyed those conversations. There was some really deep wisdom there, and then we ended up talking about was still before the pandemic.
Spiritual formation,
right? When we were actually halfway through, I think, is when we went online. Mm-hmm. And I remember Pastor Gino came in and started sharing about different rhythms that his community does, and how they think about the presence of God in everyday ordinary life. I'm trying to think what else we talked about in that series. We had
did Michael?
Yeah, Michael Gonzalez came and shared just about emotions and processing emotions.
We had discussion about music.
That's right. Yeah, you helped us lead that. Songs, and how songs play a role in shaping us over time. I mean, people sing songs every week at church, you know. I remember, I think I helped facilitate a conversation about like, what do we call it? Like rituals. Like we go through these rituals, and how do rituals shape us, and how can we be mindful of the rituals that we're going through instead of just kind of mindlessly going through them, and how rituals can look really foreign and weird to people that are not in on it, you know. And just kind of, I don't know, actually that conversation series I think it really shaped me for thinking about the time of being in coronavirus and thinking about rituals and things. Because I remember during the beginning of coronavirus, this is when coronavirus was beginning, I was thinking about like, oh, we're human beings, that we need to like have rituals. We have rhythms as humans, and we need to build a rhythm. So I was like, let's do this, keep going with Zoom meetings, even though it's not ideal, and we probably need this kind of regularity. So I remember that was the conversation. I'm trying to remember what we did next. I think it was when we did the
different denominations.
I think that was later. I think that's when we did stuff about like leaders in our community, right? That's what it was. Yeah, so that's when we had when we talked about when we invited different leaders connected to our community. We were talking about leadership and innovation. And I think it was, I remember Leonard Dow came and shared about, because it was the beginning of the pandemic, he was sharing about creative destruction, and how sometimes you need to destroy some things in the process of creating new things. And Ness really talked about leading like he was kind of like talking about the underdogs. Jesus chose the underdogs, and leadership doesn't always look like the fancy stuff, you know, and it's just boots on the ground. And trying to think about who else came.
You had Anthony come, I think.
Anthony Ramos. Maybe did we share with this one? I think we shared later.
I thought he came twice this year.
Yeah, maybe he came for this one. I don't remember.
I guess it was 5 weeks or 4 weeks.
Probably 4 weeks. I think Rob Whitmire might have come to share. Mr. Rob. Just about serving. I think you just talked about serving. What's it look like to serve, and you know. Did
you have your mentee friend from this year.
Danielle.
Pastor Dan.
Pastor Danielle. Yeah, Elder Danielle. Pastor Danielle. She did come and share.
Was it this one? Or was it?
Trying to remember. She might have just come and shared separately from any series. But yeah, I guess it was. Oh, I know. Also, Pastor Q came to share for this, and he was talking about like how the church can be. You know, he used the term missional. How the church can learn to innovate and to. He used the word fresh. He did use the word fresh movements, like be more responsive to the needs of the world, and be less stagnant, and how we structure, even including how we structure the way we do church. Yeah, I remember that conversation because Zeke was part of that one. So yeah, that was several weeks, and then just the idea of innovation and freshness and courage moving forward. After that is when we had the conversation about unity in Christ, and this is where we had different Christians from different denominations. So we had Lynn Parks from Mennonite, Anabaptist, Peace Traditions. We had Reverend Tehu Lee from the Reformed tradition. Jeffrey Brown, right? He was kind of representing. This was also still during George Floyd stuff, so he was talking about historically Black church, and including some of the churches here in Philadelphia, and how they're not really part of like Reformed, or they're in a different category, and just obviously how they have fostered a more holistic life among a lot of Christians into the Black church. Is that one we had? The Orthodox? Yeah. Marianne Salid shared about Orthodox Christianity, and Leonette Fabatera shared about Catholic Christianity. And I might be missing one or two. Yeah, that was a really interesting. I'm still thinking about those conversations. Hopefully we can continue those kind of conversations in the future. But yeah, that was a sort of a learning journey, and trying to learn how to be unified with people that we don't necessarily understand yet, but who are connected to us as followers of Jesus by His Spirit. So this was when it was leading up to the election. I guess I remember being inspired. I was like, hey, we should just talk about the two things we should never talk about in polite conversation: faith and politics. And that was actually a pretty good conversation series. We had Anthony Ramos, who has been doing faith organizing through Esperanza Incorporated, trying to get people to vote. He came and shared.
We had Mako come.
Yeah, my friend Mako shared about, is the U.S. a Christian nation?
And you led a couple discussions. I
led a conversation about, faith and politics.
And then Professor Baycoat.
That's right. Professor Baycoat from Wheaton College, she came and shared about how do we go forward after the election. And that was the day before the election, remember, November 2nd. So that was a really interesting conversation series. I think obviously that one is also one that it's never going to go away in terms of a conversation we're going to learn to have together. And I think after that is, that's the series we've been in since November till the end of the year. Really, we're going to continue maybe one or two more conversations in the new year. But Lynette and I sort of shaped the idea for this series to have conversation about prayer, starting with the topic of not just talking at God, but learning to be with God, learning to listen to God and be in His presence. So those have been some good conversations too. I think mostly those have been in-house. I've led most of the conversations about, we talked, Lynette also helped, we talked about dreams, just
prayer in
general. We talked about questions people have about prayer. So, yeah. So I guess, I guess it's helpful to think through that. Most of that has been journeying together during the virus. But I guess as we think about what we're hoping for in 2021, I one way to think about it is God gives us dreams, and but not every dream that we have is a God-given dream. And I guess our hopes for 2021, we want to allow them to be shaped by Jesus, and allow our sense of looking forward. And we are always moving forward in time, and we want to let them be shaped by Jesus. I want to share, before we maybe share some hopes for 2021, I wanted to share a couple of these little pictures that I looked up earlier. So these are basically different ways different cultures think about time. And basically we can't really we always have to live anticipating different events, And this is on the left, this is like how old pagan or heathen holidays that were really mostly centered around, I think, kind of the weather, I don't even know what these words are saying, but I just found a Google image.
The runes.
Yeah, so you have like the winter solstice, you've heard that like a lot of Christmas came out of those kind of things. Winter solstice, autumn, so that's kind of one way of celebrating time. In America, we oftentimes think of our holidays, our national federal holidays when you get off, which some of them connect with religious holidays, not all of them do. But if you think about it, they all orient time around something, For the US, it's a mix of religious things and different religions, but it's also things surrounding the US as a country, right? I mean, things that shapes the US, like President's Day, Labor Day, Veterans Day, right? I guess people don't always celebrate Columbus Day, but that's kind of related to our country, or, MLK Day. So that gives you a sense of how you think about time in relation to the US. I wanted to look just two other slides. This one is how Jewish people thought about time, right? I asked a friend, I've been learning from some friends that are, I'm involved in a text group of people that are Messianic Jews. So they believe in Yeshua, Jesus, but they're Jewish. And so you notice that a lot of this also centers around the seasons, because in more agricultural cultures, the seasons connects with like the harvest. And so like, if you ever think about like,
well, that determines when you're allowed to rest.
Right. That's a good point.
You have to work.
Right. When they kind of hibernated or whatever. Like Pentecost, before it became a Christian holiday, was a harvest festival, So I guess the season, they would put certain spiritual significance surrounding it. So like, almost like Pentecost was this time of thanksgiving and like gratitude, and I'm anticipating the harvest God was bringing. And then it just sort of made sense given the season of the year, like how you would celebrate. And I think there was 7 big Jewish festivals, and for us as believers, so the Messianic Jews would say we should still celebrate it this way. They would just add that Jesus is the one who fulfills each of these festivals, right? And I'm still learning about this. I don't understand that fully yet. But this is if you're involved in churches that have, I guess, a little bit more formality to them, I think the Catholic Church, Episcopal churches, some of these other churches that they follow the church calendar, the Christian calendar, and this circle represents that, right? I mean, so most Christians celebrate Christmas and Easter, or, some people don't like to use the word Easter, resurrection, right? Incarnation and resurrection. some people celebrate Lent leading up to Easter, and a lot of us are starting to celebrate Advent leading up to Christmas. But there's these other seasons in between, like we're Christmas is now leading into Epiphany, right? Epiphany, then Lent, Easter, Pentecost. I think a lot of Pentecostal churches will celebrate Pentecost. I think we usually do that. And then there's a season of ordinary time, which is focusing on Jesus, or I guess it's focusing on maybe I have to look into that. I think that's related to focusing on the church, the life of the church, maybe the book of Acts. But anyways, what's interesting about this way of organizing your year is like every Sunday they will share, this is this day, and this is the second week of ordinary time, or like the third week of Epiphany, or the first week of Advent. And if you think about, like, going back if you think about your sense of time as related to federal holidays and this kind of thing, you're really just thinking about, like, it's fall and I'm looking forward to Halloween, right? Those kind of things. But there's a sense in which a lot of Christians are starting to recover the sense of the Christian calendar. And it's not like,
Liturgy.
Yeah, this kind of liturgy, right? And I'm exploring it, but it's going back to that series we had about spiritual rhythms, and a lot of we're creatures of habit, and we need things to center our lives around, and so it's something that we might talk about in a future week. I might have somebody come in to share who's studied this stuff and knows more about this. Yeah, so I wanted to kind of leave it at that and say that, propose that maybe some of us could consider to think about this coming year, 2021, and how can we center our lives more around Jesus in this coming year? And maybe part of that could be adopting some of these rhythms that other Christians around the world adopt to shape our sense of time. So that's just a broad reflection question that we can all consider, but maybe more specifically to us, I want to see what our desires or hopes are for 2021, and maybe we could share them real quick and then leave it at that.
Okay. Is there another slide?
No, that's it. That's the slide.
Are we following this calendar in 2021?
Is that? Yeah, my desire, I guess, for 2021, my desire. Some of you may know that I'm applying to a school for a PhD program. My desire is to just gain clarity, whether to do that or not, or whether to shift my efforts in another direction. But I'm also really excited about just kind of getting more involved in our neighborhood in Kensington. So I guess my desire is just to more fully live into the rhythms that I feel like God is calling me to, and to get even more rooted here in our neighborhood in relationships. And another desire, I guess this isn't so much in terms of what I want to do, but in terms of what I hope will happen. I just hope to see a couple people I'm thinking about come to know Jesus. There's one person I'm really interacting with a lot, and I'm just praying that their life can be touched by Christ. Yeah, and then personal goals wise, I want to be more disciplined about writing things down, right? Maybe committing certain things to writing, be a little bit more organized than I have been, and be more disciplined about keeping in touch with certain people. Sometimes I can just passively allow relationships to happen, and I don't think relationships really just happen. You have to be intentional about asking people how they're doing and calling them and stuff like that. So I think I'm going to try to, for this coming year, build in some of those things on certain days. One of the things I want to do besides that is on Thursdays, my goal is to do some community visitations in our neighborhood, to meet people and pray for them. So just kind of those things I want to add, besides the maybe following the Christian calendar as a whole. I want to maybe add certain habits to my weekly calendar that I think will be healthy. So those are some of my hopes. What about you?
Yeah. I guess every year I think about exercising, but maybe we'll get a mini basketball court on the block.
And then you can go out and exercise anytime.
And then I've been putting off a lot of house projects for 8 years, and thinking about just getting over the fear of what if it's not perfect, and just getting some stuff done so that we could be more hospitable. Yeah, I guess something I was thinking about. Well, sometimes I think about like, oh, should we get a long-term roommate, or like a roommate for maybe a year, or like 6 months or something. But then I also thought about maybe we should have a place where people can get away for a weekend.
Like one of these rooms, like this room,
right? Like, or a week
okay.
or something, like,
Yeah.
Because it's not that people can't stand their families. I think it's just sometimes people need to release the valve on the pressure cooker once in a while and then go back to their families, or like
yeah, you just need to shake it up a little bit sometimes.
So foster care, they do this thing called respite care, which is
Right.
like, the weekend, let people have a break with their families. I don't know. We don't have to do that. I just was thinking about that. I never told you.
Okay.
And then, yeah, work, I guess I'm thinking about just like, what is our goal as
the dental team?
Dentists, or what is my job as a dentist, and how to achieve some of those goals community-wise or bigger picture-wise. So,
like the dental health of our community, not just of one individual patient.
Right, and not just like one tooth at a time. But I was listening to a talk about, having to intervene upstream. But nobody's really going upstream because it's really, really hard. But maybe even writing about what are some ideas to intervene upstream. So, yeah, I guess there's that. And, I want to cut my hair.
That's a one-time thing. That's not really like a 2021 like.
Well, it's going to involve maintenance.
That's true. Yeah, maybe I'll see if I still have my hair growing by the end of 2021. Well, these are just the beginnings of us beginning to think about 2021, but I encourage all of us maybe to dedicate some time thinking about processing this last year, and looking forward to next year. I think that there's a difference between doing it just by yourself, introspection, and doing it with Jesus. Like inviting Jesus into the process of remembering the past and God's presence with you in it, and looking forward to the future, and letting Jesus, by his Spirit, sort of shape our hopes and desires and perspective on entering into a new year. So I think, it's sort of an artificial time every year, January 1, to think about it. But I think it's a good time to think about it. It's a good stop, little rest to reorient ourselves. Maybe there's certain habits we need to break off. Maybe there's ways of doing things that we could adopt again. So yeah, that's what we want to talk about today. I want to just kind of lastly note that we're thinking about potentially in the second week of January, beginning another series of conversations. Actually, this was sparked by conversations with Moses Serrano about evangelism, and actually Marquise too, about evangelism, and or witness is another word for it. And I've connected with different people that around Philadelphia, but also elsewhere, that have a lot to share with us. I mean, all of us already have Jesus' Spirit, can learn how to do this, right? But some people have thought a lot more about this or have a lot of experience. One person that I want to bring in to share was a missionary in the Middle East for like, I don't remember, 20, 30 years, you know? And so he has a lot of thoughts about the process of sharing Jesus with people. And so anyways, I'm looking forward to having those series of conversations. What does it look like to bear witness to Jesus in our time, in our culture? So you can look forward to that. And lastly, if you don't have anything else you want to share, I wanted to see who wants to watch Pixar's Soul. We watched it with our family over Christmas, and I thought it was amazing. But who wants to watch it on Wednesday? So I already posted it.
Please. Jeremy's been talking about this nonstop and needs more people to talk about it with. So,
it's a really good movie. And I think it's just a lot, very thought-provoking.
That way you don't have to hear about it.
So if you want to talk about it, and we can talk about it together. And so Amy and I don't have to be the only ones who talk about it together. We're thinking about Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. So, yeah.
It's an hour and 47 minutes. So.
Yeah, and look up the preview.
Put on your jammies and watch it, and then brush your teeth and floss before you go to sleep.
Yeah. Anyways, thanks for listening, and hope we can have a reflective end of the year, and amid the festivities that are Christmas and New Year's, and also hopeful 2021.
Okay.
Let's stop our video.
So